In the relentless bustle of the city's subway, where thousands hurried past indifferent and preoccupied, Eleanor sat tucked away in a corner seat, a striking figure caught in a quiet storm of vulnerability, clutching her infant daughter Chloe close to her chest. Eleanor, a high-powered businesswoman, was usually the embodiment of poise and control. A woman accustomed to making commanding decisions in sleek boardrooms, navigating complex financial landscapes and managing a life of privilege and status. Yet here, on this rattling train packed with weary commuters, her meticulously maintained facade crumbled under the weight of raw, unfiltered motherhood. Baby Chloe, barely a few months old, cried out with a piercing, unrelenting wail, her tiny fists clenched as if wrestling with a frustration far beyond her understanding. The loud metallic screeches of the subway mixed with the cries, creating a chaotic symphony that seemed to magnify the distress rather than soothe it. Around Eleanor, the atmosphere was thick with impatience. The eyes of strangers darted toward her with judgment, some with thinly veiled annoyance, others with barely concealed disdain. Whispers floated through the stale air, an invisible chorus of blame for a mother unable to quiet her child in a public space. The social judgment weighed heavily on Eleanor's shoulders, making the physical confines of the subway car feel even more suffocating. She pressed her cheek to Chloe's damp forehead, whispering soft assurances she barely believed, desperate for a breakthrough that would calm her daughter and lift the invisible burden of shame pressing down on them both. Each failed attempt intensified Eleanor's sense of isolation, as though her success and wealth mattered for nothing against the universal challenge of soothing a frightened, overwhelmed baby. For all her accomplishments, Eleanor felt utterly alone, the vulnerable new mother beneath the tailored suit glaring back at her from the mirror of human experience. Across the aisle, a quieter but equally compelling scene unfolded. Marcus, a single father and aspiring musician, sat with his daughter Maya nestled against his side. Marcus's life was one of stark contrasts to Eleanor's. He juggled 2 jobs to make ends meet, fueled by an unyielding determination to provide a better future for Maya after the heartbreak of losing his wife. Though less polished and less affluent, Marcus carried a resilience and tenderness shaped by hardship and love. Maya, a perceptive child with wide, curious eyes, had long learned to read the nuances of human emotion, and today she noticed the distress etched on Eleanor's face, the helpless frustration of a mother drowning in the sea of judgment and noise. The piercing cries of baby Chloe cut through the subway's din, and Maya, with an instinct beyond her years, gently nudged her father's arm, silently urging him to act. Marcus, understanding the silent plea, slowly rose to his feet, aware that his presence would momentarily draw attention. Yet the fatigue in his bones was outweighed by the resolve to offer what he could, a simple, heartfelt gesture of kindness. As the train rattled forward, Marcus began to hum a soft lullaby, a tune woven from the fabric of countless sleepless nights and tender moments shared with Maya. The melody, gentle and unassuming, flowed through the tense air like a balm, a quiet counterpoint to the harsh, clanging world around them. His voice, rough but sincere, bridged the gap between strangers with the universal language of love and empathy. Slowly, the effect was undeniable. Chloe's cries faltered, then softened, like the first fragile notes of dawn breaking through a night of storm. Her wide eyes, still wet from tears, found focus on Marcus's kind face, a stranger whose compassion had reached across invisible divides of class and circumstance. The carriage's collective mood shifted, the once judgmental stares replaced by a quiet, shared witness to something profound and beautiful. Eleanor's heart, raw and exposed, swelled with a mixture of relief, gratitude, and awe. She felt tears pooling in her eyes, tears not just for the relief from her baby's cries, but for the unexpected reminder that kindness knows no boundaries of wealth or social status. In that fleeting, intimate moment, Eleanor and Marcus were no longer disparate lives defined by circumstance, but fellow travelers united by the deep, universal struggles and joys of parenthood. The subway, a place often associated with anonymity and indifference, had become a vessel for connection and healing, a reminder that even amidst the cacophony of the city and the noise of judgment, simple acts of empathy could create sanctuaries of peace. Eleanor, who had long equated success with control, found her understanding of true wealth transformed by the hum of a lullaby and the gentle courage of a stranger who saw her not as a socialite but as a mother. As the train neared her stop, she rose with a renewed sense of grace. her eyes meeting Marcus's in a silent exchange of thanks and shared humanity. For Marcus and Maya, the moment was no less significant, a quiet victory in the ongoing challenges of their life, a testament to the power of compassion to bridge divides and ease burdens. This encounter on the subway lingered long after the train had pulled away, an indelible mark on Eleanor's heart that reshaped her perspective on kindness, connection, and the invisible threads that bind all parents in their fierce, imperfect love. In a world too often divided by status and circumstance, it was a reminder that beneath the surface, the struggles and triumphs of parenthood are universal, and that sometimes the simplest gestures, a lullaby hummed in a crowded subway car, hold the most profound power to heal and unite. Victoria stood rigid in the crowded subway car, her designer coat and ill-fitting armor against the suffocating press of bodies and the sharp, incessant wails of her infant son, James. The noise of the train, the grinding screech of metal wheels on tracks, faded beneath the louder cry of a child overwhelmed by the unfamiliar, jarring world around him. Victoria's hands trembled as she tried to soothe him, whispering soft, unsure reassurances, but the piercing sobs only intensified, drawing sharp, judgmental glances from passengers who seemed to carry a silent chorus of disapproval. Despite her polished appearance and social standing, Victoria felt utterly exposed and helpless, the veneer of a perfectly controlled life cracking under the raw and relentless demands of new motherhood. Her world, once so full of certainty and comfort, had narrowed to this cramped space. Her baby's pain, and the harsh eyes of strangers who seemed to hold her accountable for every tear and shriek. The gentle sway of the train offered no relief, only highlighting the stark contrast between her usual privileged life and the vulnerable reality she now faced. Across from her, Daniel sat quietly with his daughter Lily, a little girl whose observant eyes flicked between Victoria's distress and her father's calm presence. Daniel's life was one marked by struggle, a widowed father balancing two demanding jobs to provide for his small family, yet his gaze was soft and understanding, a quiet strength forged by years of hardship and love. Lily clutched her most precious companion, a worn teddy bear named Mr. Snuggles, whose faded fur and frayed seams told stories of comfort and companionship that had seen them through countless challenges. Watching Victoria's struggle, Lily gently held out Mr. Snuggles, offering the bear with a quiet hope that transcended words. Daniel, recognizing the unspoken plea, took the bear with a warm but tentative smile and rose from his seat. Approaching Victoria, he extended Mr. Snuggles toward her son, the bear's soft texture and familiar presence a silent promise of comfort. At first, Victoria regarded the gesture with guarded surprise, but as James's tiny hand reached instinctively for the teddy bear, his cries softened, his tears giving way to curious gurgles. Relief washed over Victoria in a profound wave, mingling with gratitude toward the stranger whose simple kindness had diffused the storm that had engulfed her. Daniel, a man of modest means, had given her a priceless gift. Not wealth or status, but a moment of peace and a reminder that compassion bridges all divides. As James nestled with Mr. Snuggles, the subway car's atmosphere shifted. Where tension and judgment had lingered, now there was warmth and quiet understanding. Passengers who had previously averted their eyes now exchanged soft smiles, their shared experience of vulnerability and parenthood quietly knitting them together. Victoria looked at Daniel and Lily, her heart opening to the realization that beneath the differences of class and circumstance lay a common thread of humanity, of struggle, and above all, of love. The moment passed, but its imprint endured, transforming her perspective on strength and connection. She understood now that vulnerability was not weakness, but a bridge to empathy, and that the truest wealth in life lay not in possessions or appearances, but in the simple, profound acts of kindness that remind us we are never truly alone. Daniel and Lily returned to their seats, the worn teddy bear now a symbol not just of comfort for a small child, but of resilience, hope, and the power of reaching out to one another. As the train rolled onward beneath the city, Victoria cradled her son close, the echo of the moment between strangers a balm for her weary soul and a promise that even in the harshest places, kindness can light the way. Sophia sat stiffly on the crowded subway bench, her fingers gripping the handle of her meticulously organized diaper bag, the weight of expectations pressing heavily on her shoulders as her baby Noah wailed relentlessly in her arms. The shrill cries seemed to pierce, the stale air of the train carriage and reverberate in her chest, each sob amplifying the gnawing fear that she was failing at something she had always wanted to master. The delicate art of motherhood, balanced perfectly alongside her career as a high-achieving executive. She had always been the kind of woman who controlled every detail of her life, from back-to-back meetings and quarterly reports to the carefully calibrated image of being the perfect mother, calm, collected, and endlessly patient. But now on this late afternoon subway ride home, she felt that control slipping away with each second Noah screamed louder, overwhelmed by the harsh fluorescent lights, the hum of the train and the press of bodies around her, all of which seemed to amplify his overstimulation and her rising panic. She rummaged desperately through her expensive diaper bag, lined with wipes, organic snacks, soothing toys designed by experts, and calming essential oils, trying everything she had learned from parenting books, podcasts, and classes, yet nothing worked. The baby's distress only worsened, and with it came the creeping sense of humiliation, as heads turned to glance at the flustered mother struggling to silence her child, and an invisible voice in her mind whispered cruel doubts about her worthiness, both as a professional and as a parent. Across from her sat Ben, a man whose clothes were simple and worn, his hands weathered from hard work and worry, his eyes tired but kind as they watched his own son, Sammy, a lively boy who could barely sit still, bouncing with restless energy that belied their recent hardship. Ben had been laid off weeks ago, the mounting bills and uncertain future pressing down on him like a storm cloud, yet he carried a quiet resilience born of necessity and love, a daily commitment to make the best of what little they had. Sammy was trying to focus on a quiet game his father had taught him, counting the number of blue seats in the carriage or spotting the shapes formed by the graffiti on the walls, but the piercing cries from Noah pulled his attention away, curiosity overtaking his boredom. Ben's gaze shifted toward Sophia, recognizing in her the exhaustion and helplessness he knew all too well from his own experiences, times when nothing seemed to calm Sammy during public meltdowns, when frustration and helplessness threatened to consume him as a father. Without a word, Ben reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, jingling set of old colorful keys, their paint chipped from years of use. The metal cool to the touch, but the sound unmistakably cheerful and familiar. This simple object, worn and humble, was Sammy's most treasured comfort, a go-to distraction that had repeatedly turned tears into curiosity and restlessness into calm. Gently, Ben shook the keys, producing a soft rhythmic jingle that cut through the noise of the subway and the crescendo of Noah's cries. Almost immediately, the baby's sobs faltered, his wide eyes locking onto the source of the sound with a dawning interest, his fists unclenching as the harshness of his distress was replaced by quiet fascination. Sophia's breath caught as she watched the transformation, a baby overwhelmed and inconsolable moments before, now soothed by the simple, melodic sound of these modest keys, a balm that all the expensive toys and gadgets she carried had failed to provide. In that instant, the gulf between her polished, controlled world and Ben's rougher, uncertain one seemed to dissolve, replaced by a profound connection rooted in the shared vulnerabilities of parenthood and the unspoken understanding of hardship. Sophia's hand trembled slightly as she reached out to accept the keys from Ben, their fingers brushing in a silent exchange filled with gratitude and recognition, a fleeting yet powerful moment of human kindness amid the anonymity of the urban commute. She held Noah closer, feeling the baby's breathing slow and his eyes grow heavy with the peaceful calm that had so suddenly replaced his distress. The tension that had gripped her heart began to ease, replaced by a quiet gratitude that spilled over into a smile she hadn't realized she could still offer amid the storm of self-doubt and fatigue. Ben smiled softly back, his gaze warm despite the shadows of uncertainty that clung to him. Though his world was clouded with worries about job prospects and making ends meet, in this small act he had found a moment of triumph, a reminder that sometimes the most valuable gifts were not material, but rooted in empathy, experience, and the simple acts of understanding that cross social divides. The subway lurched to the next stop, doors sliding open to let on a fresh wave of passengers. But for a brief, shining moment, two strangers and their children shared a fragile bubble of peace amid the chaos, a reminder that no matter how different their lives, they were united by the universal challenges and joys of parenthood. As Ben gathered Sammy's hand to stand and prepare to disembark, the jangling keys were left in Sophia's lap, an unassuming symbol of hope and connection, a testament to the unexpected ways kindness and understanding can ripple through even the most difficult days. Sophia sat back as the train moved on, her heart lighter, her mind softer, carrying with her a lesson far beyond what any career achievement had taught her. That motherhood was not a performance of perfection or control, but a journey marked by vulnerability, resilience, and the grace found in shared humanity. The jingling of those modest keys echoed in her ears like a quiet anthem of comfort and connection, a reminder that sometimes the simplest gestures carry the greatest power to heal, unite, and transform, and that in the vast anonymous cityscape, even the smallest kindness can light a path through darkness, forging bonds between lives that at first seem worlds apart but are, at their core, deeply and beautifully intertwined. Jessica sat rigidly on the subway bench, her immaculate appearance, a tailored cream coat, perfectly styled hair, and subtle but expensive makeup, belying the turmoil roiling beneath the surface. Cradled in her arms was Emily, her 6-month-old daughter, whose cries filled the confined car with a sharp, unrelenting wail that seemed to pierce not only the air, but Jessica's very soul. The baby's tiny fists pounded against her mother's chest, her face red and scrunched in frustration, while Jessica's heart clenched with helplessness. Around her, the stifling silence of the subway was punctuated by the occasional uneasy glance or barely concealed sigh from other passengers, their eyes flickering with silent judgment, as if to say that a privileged woman like Jessica should somehow have more control, should have silenced the child, should have prevented the disturbance altogether. Those looks were sharp, invisible needles that pricked at Jessica's confidence, making her feel as if her carefully crafted identity was unraveling with every sob. Despite the designer bag resting on her lap, containing every curated essential from organic wipes to a breast milk bottle warmed to perfection, nothing could calm. Emily? Jessica's fingers trembled as she searched desperately, hands moving quickly but without success, while her mind raced through the cascade of emotions: shame, anxiety, and the gnawing fear of failure. She knew her life was cushioned by wealth and connections, that she was far removed from the hardships that many mothers face daily. Yet in that moment, all those advantages seemed meaningless against the primal, urgent needs of her baby and the cold scrutiny of strangers. Across the aisle, a different world quietly coexisted. Tom sat with the weary but steady composure of a man who knew hardship intimately, the worn fabric of his jacket, the calloused hands resting on his knees, and the tired but gentle eyes of a single father who shouldered the weight of providing alone. Next to him, his daughter Chloe sat calmly, her presence a small island of peace amid the tension. Chloe's gaze shifted toward Emily's distress, the child's curiosity and compassion shining through the stillness. Without a word, Chloe reached into her modest backpack, pulling out a small packet of colorful fruit snacks, soft, chewy, dissolvable treats that were a rare indulgence in their modest life. She gently nudged her father and pointed toward the packet, silently asking if they could help. Tom, understanding the subtle request and the simplicity of the solution, reached inside and pulled out a single piece. Leaning forward with a quiet kindness that transcended their differences, he held it out toward Jessica and softly said, "Sometimes they just need a little something to chew on." Jessica blinked, surprised by the gesture. It was unexpected, coming from a man she might never have noticed otherwise, from a life so different from her own. Yet in his voice, in his eyes, she recognized a shared truth that had nothing to do with wealth or social status. The raw, universal challenge of meeting a child's needs when words fail, when exhaustion threatens, when patience runs thin. For a moment, pride wrestled with relief within Jessica, but she swallowed her hesitation and accepted the snack, her hands shaking slightly as she broke off a small piece and offered it to Emily. The baby's cries slowed, curiosity sparking as the new texture and taste caught her attention. The sudden quiet was profound. The relentless wails gave way to soft gurgles and the faintest smiles. Jessica's breath caught in her throat, and tears she had held back began to slip down her cheeks unnoticed amid the dim lighting and the hum of the train. Her eyes met Tom's, and in that brief, unspoken exchange, a bridge formed, a recognition that despite the gulf between their lives, they were united by the fierce, exhausting, beautiful reality of parenthood. It was a moment that transcended the stifling judgments and the heavy expectations she had felt moments before, replacing them with the warmth of genuine human connection. The subway car moved steadily onward, the world outside a blur, but inside Jessica's heart the journey had shifted. Where there had been despair, now was hope. She cradled Emily closer, feeling a newfound strength and calmness, an awareness that kindness can come from the most unexpected places. that support is not measured by money or social standing, but by empathy and understanding. As the train neared her stop, she stood carefully, mindful of Emily's peaceful state, and offered Tom a sincere smile. Whispering a heartfelt thank you, Tom nodded in response, his own smile humble but filled with quiet pride, while Chloe waved shyly at Jessica, who waved back. As Jessica stepped off the train into the bustling city streets, she carried with her more than just her baby's quiet contentment. She bore a profound lesson learned in the small, shared snack, a lesson that true help, true compassion, and true connection are often found in the kindness of strangers who know the struggle of parenthood, regardless of background or circumstance. It was a reminder that beneath the surface, beyond the facades, parents everywhere walk similar paths of love, vulnerability, and the ceaseless desire to comfort their children, and that sometimes, in the simplest acts, the deepest bonds are forged. The subway car was a small, rattling capsule of human stories and silent struggles, hurtling through the veins of the city where lives intersected briefly, often unnoticed. Among the sea of faces, one figure stood out, though not by choice. Eleanor, a high-powered businesswoman whose polished exterior was now vulnerable beneath the soft weight of motherhood. She sat near the window, her designer suit a stark contrast to the grimed and weary faces around her, clutching her infant daughter Chloe, whose cries had become a sharp, urgent crescendo against the metallic drone of the train. Eleanor's world, once defined by control, deadlines, and corporate triumphs, was now unraveling in the most human and raw way imaginable. Baby Chloe, her delicate skin flushed with distress, cried as if the noise and jostling of the subway were an assault on her tiny senses. Eleanor's attempts to soothe her, rocking gently, whispering calming words, even nursing quietly, were met only with louder wails, each one echoing the helplessness that tightened like a knot in Eleanor's chest. Around them, the atmosphere thickened with judgment. Eyes that might have once been sympathetic now turned cold or impatient. Whispers floated between passengers, the old familiar murmurs of, "Why can't she control that baby?" And some people shouldn't bring children into public spaces. Eleanor felt every gaze as if it were a weight pressing down, dragging her further into a pit of embarrassment and isolation. She glanced furtively at the other passengers, their faces a mirror of her own frustration and fatigue, but theirs was mixed with irritation and blame, while hers was pure desperation. For all her money and status, Eleanor was trapped in a moment of profound vulnerability that no amount of power could fix. The world she controlled so easily outside was now a distant memory, replaced by the stark reality of a mother struggling against the relentless cries of her child and the silent condemnation of strangers. On the other side of the subway car, another small family navigated their own journey. Marcus, a single father, sat with his daughter Maya close by. Life had dealt Marcus a far tougher hand than Eleanor's. He worked long hours at 2 jobs, barely scraping by, yet there was a quiet dignity in the way he held Maya's hand, in the gentle attentiveness with which he watched over her. Marcus was an aspiring musician, holding on to dreams that seemed distant in the face of daily struggles, but his heart was rich with love and resilience. Maya, a bright-eyed girl with a calm demeanor that belied her young age, had become attuned to the subtle language of empathy early in her life. When Chloe's cries pierced the crowded space, Maya's gaze moved from the chaos to the exhausted woman holding the baby. She nudged her father softly, a silent plea passing between them. Marcus, understanding the language of tired parents everywhere, rose slowly from his seat, the weight of fatigue evident in his movements but outweighed by the resolve to offer a balm to the storm of distress before him. The subway car seemed to hush for a moment as Marcus began to hum a simple lullaby, a song he often sang to Maya on long, sleepless nights filled with worry and hope. His voice was not polished or trained, but it carried an unspoken promise of comfort and care. The melody wove gently through the noise, a thread of warmth and softness in the harsh, metallic environment. It was a fragile, tentative thing, just a few notes rising above the clatter. Yet it held a power that transcended language and circumstance. Eleanor's heart, burdened by the relentless cries, caught the lullaby like a lifeline. Chloe's sobs faltered as if caught in the gentle current of Marcus's song, then slowed, each note smoothing away the sharp edges of her distress. Her tiny hands, once clenched in frustration, began to unclench, reaching instinctively toward the source of the soothing sound. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, tears of relief, gratitude, and awe. at the kindness offered by this stranger who had stepped into her moment of need without hesitation or judgment. The judgmental stares that had once seemed suffocating now seemed distant, replaced by a shared humanity that bound them across invisible divides. In that moment, Eleanor and Marcus were no longer defined by their disparate lives or social stations. They were simply parents, united in the timeless and universal struggle to comfort a child and find peace amid chaos. The subway car, often a symbol of anonymity and isolation, became a space of unexpected connection and healing. Around them, a subtle shift occurred. Passengers who had been restless or disapproving softened, some exchanging knowing glances, others silently acknowledging the rare and precious nature of the moment unfolding before them. The lullaby was a quiet rebellion against the coldness of the world, a reminder that kindness and empathy are powerful forces that can break through barriers and touch the deepest parts of the human spirit. For Eleanor, the encounter was transformative. The high-powered businesswoman who had equated success with control and status found her perceptions forever altered by the simple act of a man's gentle song. She realized that true wealth was not measured by the labels on her clothes or the numbers in her bank account, but by the capacity to offer and receive compassion. Marcus, too, found a renewed sense of purpose and validation in the exchange. Though his life was marked by struggle and sacrifice, he had given something invaluable, a moment of peace and a reminder of the shared joys and hardships of parenthood. Maya smiled quietly beside him, proud of her father's courage and kindness, understanding that sometimes the smallest gestures have the greatest impact. As the train approached Eleanor's stop, she gathered Chloe close, feeling an unfamiliar lightness despite the exhaustion that still clung to her bones. She turned to Marcus, their eyes meeting in a silent exchange of gratitude and recognition, a fleeting but profound connection that would linger long after the subway doors closed behind her. The world outside the train was unchanged, no less busy, no less demanding, but inside Eleanor a seed of change had been planted. The lullaby, simple and unpretentious, had cut through the noise of judgment and isolation to reveal a deeper truth, that in the vast, complicated tapestry of life, kindness is the thread that weaves us together. As Eleanor stepped onto the platform, she carried with her not just a quieter baby but a heart expanded by empathy, a resolve to be gentler with herself and others, and a new understanding that wealth, in its most meaningful form, is found in connection and compassion. In the days that followed, the memory of the subway lullaby stayed with Eleanor, shaping how she faced the challenges of motherhood and life beyond the boardroom. She began to see her world through a wider lens, recognizing the quiet battles waged by those around her, whether clad in designer suits or worn work clothes. The encounter with Marcus and Maya became a touchstone, a reminder that beneath the surface of every life lies a story of struggle, hope, and the universal need for kindness. For Marcus, the experience reinforced his belief in the power of music and love to heal and unite, motivating him to keep pursuing his dreams. Despite the hardships, Maya's gentle nudge had sparked a moment of grace that transcended the ordinary, reminding all who witnessed it that even in the busiest, most impersonal places, the human heart can still find resonance and warmth. Thus, the subway became more than just a transit route. It was a stage for the quiet acts of humanity that define us. The lullaby of the subway, humming softly amidst the clatter and rush, carried a message that reached far beyond the immediate moment, that judgment can be replaced by understanding, isolation by connection, and fear by love. Eleanor, Marcus, Chloe, and Maya, though strangers from vastly different worlds, were forever linked by that shared lullaby, a testament to the enduring power of compassion in a world that too often forgets to listen to the music beneath the noise. Victoria trembled in the suffocating heat of the subway car, clutching baby James close to her chest as his piercing cries cut through the metallic hull of the carriage, echoing off grimy windows, bouncing off tired faces. Her designer coat, expensive and immaculate, felt suddenly foreign, heavy. The luxury she was born into did nothing to shield her from the raw reality of motherhood. She peeked around through blurry eyes, searching for some sign of sympathy in the faces of strangers. A nod, a soft smile, but found instead impatience, judgment in every sideways glance. Stiff backs turning toward her, muffled sighs. James writhed in her arms, overwhelmed by the unfamiliar noise, the press of bodies, the stark fluorescent light, and Victoria, usually composed in high-stakes business meetings, felt her confidence dissolve. She rocked him gently, whispered words she hoped would comfort, offered a pacifier, a soft cloth, even a lullaby learned long ago. But nothing worked. Each failed attempt deepened the shame, each loud sob punctuating her own sense of failure. She wasn't used to being helpless. Her life had been privilege and assurance, elegant dinners, perfectly planned schedules, staff to smooth over mishaps. Yet here she was, powerless in the most basic way, bereft of a solution, her heart thudding with fear, not for herself but for her baby, for the sense that perhaps she was not enough. Not far away sat Daniel and his daughter Lily. Daniel's jacket was frayed at the elbows. His shoes weren't new. His hands bore the calluses of long hours at work. His eyes, soft warm, were lined with fatigue. Lily, small and observant, held her most cherished toy, a teddy bear named Mr. Snuggles, whose fur was matted, whose seams were stretched, whose button eyes had lost some of their shine. But in Lily's hands it was perfect. It was more than a toy. It was solace. A companion through nights of missing someone, through scraped knees and quiet tears and whispered dreams. Lily watched Victoria's distress. They always passed this route. And as James's cries rose again, she looked at her father, a silent plea in her eyes. "Can we help?" Daniel understood. With a gentle movement, he lifted Mr. Snuggles from Lily's soft clutch, offered a reassuring hand to his daughter, then rose from his seat. He approached Victoria with humility, not spectacle, his steps careful so as not to jostle the crowd, so as not to make the moment awkward, though there was no way to avoid attention. Victoria's eyes flicked up, startled, defensive. She wondered what he intended. A woman like her should handle this. She should not need help from a stranger in worn clothes. But the man only extended the bear. No judgment, no pity, just an offering of comfort. He held Mr. Snuggles gently so that James could see it, so the soft fabric might catch his attention. The familiar plush, the idea of comfort from something well-loved, seems to reach across the chaos. At first, James's cries faltered, a hiccup, a gasp, then his small hand stretched out. His fingers curled around the bear's paw, clutching its worn fur. The sound that had filled the subway, the high keening anguish, began to shift, from cries to sobs to whimpers. Victoria's tight shoulders loosened. Her breath came in shaky moments, but easier now. Tears, relief, gratitude, humility blurred her vision. Her heart pounded, not with shame now, but with something like recognition. The truth that kindness does not cost much but means everything. The atmosphere in the subway car seemed to shift, as though the offer of compassion had rippled outward. Passengers who had tightened lips, pressed themselves against distance, now shifted, some offering small understanding smiles, some avoiding gazes but softening posture. Lily sat quietly again, her heart full, proud. Mr. Snuggles returned home to Lily afterward, but the moment remained with Victoria, the image of a simple bear, a father's gentle act, a child's comfort offered without thought of reward. She looked at Daniel, seeing in his tired eyes something she had often mistaken for weakness, but was in truth strength, a strength born of love, sacrifice, of doing what must be done for another even when one struggles oneself. Victoria cradled James, her own tears wet and warm, and in that messy, noisy subway car she understood that true wealth is not in the clothes that shine or the accounts that grow, but in the softness of a genuine gesture that says you are not alone. Daniel returned to his seat beside Lily, the burden of his many cares still there, but lighter somehow, carrying with him the quiet knowledge that his small act had changed a moment, maybe more. And Victoria, as the next station approached, realized that she might always carry the memory of Mr. Snuggles's worn fur, not as a reminder of her privilege, but as proof of the power of shared humanity, that across clothes, across wealth, across difference, there lies the same heart that aches and hopes and loves.